Today we're going to learn how to apply edgings to our pie shawl. The first edging we're going to do is a crocheted chain edge that looks like this. And it's really the quickest way to do an edging, and it's nice and airy, and there's a lot of stretch to it, and it can pin out nice and pointy if you like. So I'll demonstrate how to do that. So here's what a crocheted edge looks like, and we're going to make one on a sample that's a worsted weight yarn. But here you can see there are 4 stitches gathered up where I'll make one single crochet, then I'm going to chain 7, and again hook up 4 live stitches, chain, I make a single crochet, and then chain. Let me show you. So here's my sample. And I'll be working with the pink yarn today so that we can really see the difference. So I'm going to take my crochet hook and I'm going to slip as if to purl all of those first 4 onto my crochet hook. I'm going to tuck my knitting needle out of the way on the right hand. I'm going to do a yarn over, pull my working yarn through all of the stitches, and for this first stitch I'm going to use both the tail that I'm crocheting with and the working yarn to complete that first crocheted stitch, that single crochet, so that it's locked in. Get my tail out of the way. Oops, there it is, out of the way. Now I'm going to chain 7. So we have 1. Have to get under both of those loops, it's a little tricky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And when you're crocheting, it's really handy to turn that hook under when you're coming through a stitch, because it leaves, let me fix that one and I'll show you. So when I yarn over, if I try to go through like this, I catch the top. But if I turn the hook down, it can fit into that little valley there you can see, and it's much easier to get through there. So now I'm going to go on to the next 4 stitches. I'm going to slip purlwise. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to yarn over, pull through all 4 stitches. Whoops, do it again. That'll happen. I'm going to yarn over, pull through all 4 of those stitches and that one that was sitting on my needle. Now I'm going to go one more time with the yarn over to lock it in, and now I can chain 7 again. 1, 2, whoops, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can see we're making little loops that are going and gathering all those stitches up. Let's do another 4 and then we'll stop. 1, slipping purlwise so I don't twist those stitches. 2, 3, 4. And now I'm going to yarn over and pull through all of the stitches that were on my lace and the border that I'm making. And I'll finish that stitch off by yarning over, and I'll go like that all the way around until I've done all of the stitches. Another part that I hadn't mentioned that I should is that it would be really helpful to put a lifeline in all of your stitches around before you start doing any borders, so that if you decide to take out or if you drop one, it doesn't go anywhere. And you'll do that all the way around till you get back to the beginning, and then you'll join your last slip stitch right into here to finish it off. Now we'll go on to the next one. The next edge we're going to look at on our pie shawl is a knitted on edge. And a knitted on edge is added sideways to the border, or as a border, so that you don't have a cast off edge. It's really lovely. And you can do it in just garter stitch, so it's just knit back and forth. And that one's a little easier to do. This lace version is lovely And once you get the hang of how to look at your pattern, you can figure it out. So many of the patterns don't come with any really specific ways to make this join look nice. So I'll show you the ways that I do it as I go to explain it. So there's this fairy lace, which I only took part of to make my chart. So the whole chart looks like this, but I actually ended up just doing this section. I didn't know that I'd have enough yarn to do all of it, so I didn't have that section of it, just that. But I'll show you as I go. The other pattern that I have that's similar is another lace pattern that has flowers. And I think it's just so sweet, and it's obviously well loved because it's so fuzzy right now. But there's a clear edge that the points come out, and then there's that really nice slip stitch that I did to join. That I'll show as we get closer, and in a worsted weight yarn it'll show up even better. You want to be mindful when you read your patterns that you think about how the pattern begins. Some of the patterns begin right in with a yarn over. With a pattern like that, it's helpful to add another stitch that you'll be able to attach to the body and then slip so that it's a nice clean line and it doesn't get involved right away like this yarn over right away. The pattern on page 47, the rose point that I just showed you in red has plain stitches right at the beginning. So that first V stitch, that means slip. So that actually has it built in that you can have an edge stitch and you don't have to worry about eating into your pattern. So you want to look carefully at the chart you want to use. Think about the directionality of it. Try to wrap your head around that, and then sit down and start practicing a swatch. I'll show you how I do it on my worsted weight. So first I want to just talk you through my thinking with this chart for this pattern. And actually it goes this way. So you can see these stitches are a knit stitch. Let me move it to the other side so it's a little clearer. So these stitches are knit, and you can tell because they make a V. This pattern was knit back and forth this way all the way up. And the action rows are coming out. Row 1 is coming out. Row 2 is going into the body. Row 3 is coming out. Row 4 is going into the body. And what I decided to do for this chart, I didn't want all of this action happening. But had I wanted this to happen, I would have added another stitch for myself so that I could have that nice slip stitch joining. But I decided I didn't want to have these extra stitches in here. I didn't know if I'd have enough yarn. So I actually ended up just making this smaller version of the chart, and I didn't need to add another stitch. So for my setup, instead of casting on 12 stitches, I cast on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I cast on 8 stitches for my setup. And then I proceeded to do as the pattern said. You can see also I like to write out my charts for myself. My key for myself, so I don't have to keep going back and checking. So let me show you how I would cast on for those stitches. To get started, you want to turn your work to the wrong side, and we're going to be casting on to this right hand needle. So it's helpful, you can either put a cap on the left hand needle or just tuck it out of the way. A cap makes more sense, but I don't have one on me right now. The other thing I suggest is putting a lifeline along under all your stitches to have them caught up. Because this is just a swatch, I didn't do that, and hopefully I won't regret it. Oh, here's a drop stitch already from when I was messing around. But that doesn't matter for this project. So now I'm going to cast on. So I'm going to turn my work, and I'm just going to do a cable cast on. You could also do a provisional cast on if you like, and then Kitchener it at the end. That's fine to do also. So you go between the 2 stitches, catch your yarn, put it on the needle. So there's 1, 2, oops, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. Okay, I'm going to turn my work. And I always like to slip the first stitch, so now we can see. Okay, I like to slip the first stitch so that it looks nice and smooth, and it doesn't have that ridge on the edge. And this first round, actually I should still be on, let me see, should still be on this side. I'm not going to turn my work yet. I'm going to slip and then knit. In there. Having another needle to work with is really helpful instead of trying to use the 2 needles that you knit with for the whole project. Now when I get to this last pink stitch, which is the last edge stitch, and I'm joining it to the body, on this side, this is the wrong side, I'm going to purl these 2 together so that the front has a nice smooth stockinette stitch. So I'm going to purl the last edge with the body. Now I'm going to turn my work. So now I'm ready to start row number 1, and you can see this really pretty stockinette stitch. And my first row, I'll move my chart over again so we can look at it. In row 1, that's just my setup row, so I'm never going to do that row again. But now I'm going to knit, do a double yarn over, knit 2 together. So first, instead of that knit stitch, because I didn't add an extra stitch here, I'm just going to slip that one over, and that will be my knit stitch. And if I slip it with the yarn in back, it just makes this really pretty line that will continue. So that's my first stitch. Then I need a double yarn over, knit 2 together, double yarn over, knit 2 together, and one more double yarn over, or maybe I did one too many. Yarn over, I'm going to knit 1, and then I have 1 at the end. I'm going to turn my work, and now again I'm going to read what the direction says. So I'll move my first stitch, that would be my first knit stitch, and then I'm going to knit 2 more, knit 1, knit 2, and then this is a purl within that same yarn over. But we're going back and forth, and every time I get to the body, I'm going to attach. I'll show you. Knit 1, knit 2, purl. Knit 1, knit 2, purl. And at first, this other needle's kind of in the way a lot, but it'll get out of the way as you cruise along. Now the last stitch of the body, I'm going to purl together. I'm in with the last stitch of the edge and the body. Turn my work, yarn in back, and I'll slip another stitch, and you can see that lace starting to happen. So things to keep in mind when you're picking a lace pattern is you want to make sure that as you go out, you're getting to your edge stitches. These cast off edge stitches are also a good way to know that that's the outer edge of your shawl, not in where the body is. And when you finish and repeat around until you get back to the beginning of your circle, then you can weave these 2 together or Kitchener them together. They're your last row with that row, and you can fudge if you need to either maybe knit 2 body stitches together and eliminate 2 body stitches if you needed to make sure your rows add up. We can go over that in class when we talk again, but there are ways to manipulate it so that your rows match up. With a short pattern like this, where it's only 4 rows, it's very easy to do, but with a pattern like this one, it was a little harder to figure out because I had 24 rows of knitting, and if I didn't plan it out, I would finish with a not finished. I wouldn't want to finish my chart here, so I had to really plan as I got towards the end to make sure that I landed on a row 24. Okay, happy knitting.